My name is Claudio Mollo, an archaeological guide for the Campania region. Great to welcome you all in this briefing about the ancient Greek town of Paestum. It is widely believed among academics that the Greeks have introduced the concept of soul, philosophy, and research. They have experimented the first form of democracy and republic, the basic art of sculpture and architecture, sciences like geometry and hydraulic, Olympic games and sport disciplines. But most of all, the concept that idleness and pleasure of life, if lived in the right measure, can develop healthy thinking and happiness. To talk about Paestum, we must know about the Euboean, who were considered the noble elite of businessmen. They were traveling by boat. They were trading copper ingots, pottery, olive oil, and wine. During the 7th century BC, they came from Greece to the Gulf of Taranto, in southern Italy. So the city of Sibari was founded. And from Sibari, a century later, they came to found the city of Paestum. The distance by sea from Sibari to Paestum is 370 nautical miles along the coast. Boats could carry up to 60 people. They were armed with square sails and boasted by rowers as well. As you can see on this painted ceramic, dated 6th century BC, we have the boats of those days depicted. Above here, we have a reproduction of an ancient Greek boat of the 6th century BC. It was built in 2009 to experience the navigation without modern comforts and navigation tools. Here are the emigration routes operated by Greek colonizers. We have a map where we can see the origin of the Greek people coming in southern Italy, from the island of Rhodes to Naples, from the Acarnania on the east coast to Capri and Sorrento, from the Euboea, the east coast, to Sybaris, and then to Poseidonia, Paestum. So these are the routes of the immigration from Greece to South Italy. People moving from a country to another, they bring new words, way of thinking, a new aspect of life. The colonizing expedition consisted of a male chosen from each family who, after consulting the oracle, organized themselves for the departure, already knowing that they were not allowed to return to their home. So the departure was a farewell. Being only males traveling, conflicts with indigenous people were unavoidable. The solution to this was often solved by marrying the daughter of the local leader. The dowry offered to the bride's father increased his prestige, since it was jewelry, weapons, and a new technology. The Greeks has given a considerable acceleration to the evolution of thought and culture of southern Italy. Let's see the condition for building a city. The first is water sources. And Paestum is located between two rivers, the Sili River and the Selse. The second condition is a sloping area toward the river or toward the sea. This is for good drainage. Paestum was built on a rocky platform gently inclined toward the sea. The third condition, rich soil for pasture and agriculture. And Paestum is surrounded by an extensive valley, ideal for shade activities. 4. Rock quarries at a short distance. Paestum was built with the rocks taken by flattening the platform on which the town was built. From the archaeological evidence, it appears that after the Greek colonization, the town became dominion of the Lucanians. Who were the Lucanians? The Lucanians were Italic people who lived on the highlands of the nearby mountains. Only during the 3rd century BC, Paestum became part of the Roman expansion and remained faithful to Rome. Even during the Carthaginian invasion, remained faithful to Rome. The name was changed from the Greek Poseidonia into the Latin Paestum, but having the same meaning. The decline and desertation of the area was due to changes in local soil drainage that led to swampy and malaria condition. It has been ascertained that the valley was flooded because the mouth of the river Sili, that you can see here below, silted. The overflow changed the whole valley into an insane swamp, impossible to live. Here we have a painting of the 1850 to give you an idea that the remains of the town of Paestum were in a swampy place, in a marsh, in a really impossible place to live. Then over the years, it was covered by the undergrowth, vegetation. During the centuries, everybody knew where Paestum was, so the city was taken away stone by stone, partially dismantled from its building. Among the few left in good condition, we have the extraordinary tombs, the Roman Forum, which is this one over here, the magic temples over here and over here, still standing as they were built. Today, the whole valley is rich and fertile due to the massive reclaiming work done under the regime of Mussolini. It was the Roman fascist pride of the Italian engineering. This work allowed the proceeding with the restoration, so the city was actually cleaned up, brought to light in a way. On this slide, we can see a segment of the 5 kilometers of fortified walls. Here below, we have the Hypogean Sacellum, which is a small shrine dated 520 BC. most probably the symbolic mausoleum of the city founder or a place associated with a sacred person. The construction was found hidden in the underground with the original terracotta tiled roof that you can see here. In it was found a series of objects: 5 iron spears, 8 bronze vessels. These are 2 of the 8 bronze vessels, and only 1 terracotta amphora, now in the Museum of Paestum. It was like a sort of time capsule where the technology of the Sybarites, the city founders, was sealed in. This slide has nothing to do with the ancient Greek town of Paestum, but I like to mention it because the area of Paestum is known as well because of the Allied landing during the Second World War. The D-Day was September 9, 1943, under the command of General Mark Clark and McCreary. Here we can see this picture, the Temple of Neptune, in which the Allied radio station was placed. You can see the guards here at the entrance of the Fifth Army. Now we will see how to build a temple. First of all, it's necessary the due sacrifice to bless the area. Then, once the decisions are taken about the sites of the temple, a solid foundation is assembled. You can see 5 layers built of rectangular stone slabs, tapered into steps to facilitate the entry. This construction is anti-seismic. It's a solid base and it's called stylopath. Then the columns are built with single segments that we call drums. And the drums are lifted and positioned one on the top of another. The last one on the top, here, you can see it, is a Doric temple-shaped capital. It's a semi-conical ring and a square platform on it. This one here. Very important, this platform, on which a long rectangular stone slab, this one here, are positioned as a support of the entablature. Once this was completed, wooden beams were positioned to support the sloped tiled roof. The tiles could be terracotta, or as in the Parthenon, the tiles were of marble. Here we have the construction machinery and the building procedure as imagined by the studies of Professor Carpiceci and Pennino. You can see that the ramps here are to position the drums sliding them on wooden rollers, one on the top of another, to build the columns. Once the column is completed, and then they were sculpting the flutes. Then, as you can see over here, the crane is a tower made of wooden poles. It works like a balance and counterweight. Once the stone slab was tied to one end, the counterweight from the other end would lift the stone beam in the right position. The most important part of the temple is what we call cella, a huge rectangular room with the shrine, the altar, you can see here, the statue of the deity, the room for treasury, and the clergy facilities. On the right here, we have a ceramic on which is painted a priest with a sacrificial donation. This is a terracotta vessel of the 5th century BC. The rituals operated by the clergy were made to increase solidarity between the people and the deities. There was always a need for the clerical interpreter. Common people were not allowed to understand the divine language of deities. The sacrifices were offered for a particular feast or a wedding, or in favor of a particular association, or in occasion of a political petition. Victims vary according to the nature of the cult, which sometimes requires a specific type of animal. In general, the victims were light-skinned animals, goats, piglets, lambs, or a modest offer like a rooster, or an ox, the most prestigious sacrifice. In Paestum, there are 3 temples: Archaic Doric, Severe Doric, and Classic Doric, still standing since they were built. It is the only place of the Greek world where this can be seen. Not even in Greece you can see something like in Paestum. Here, on this picture, we have the oldest, the archaic Doric temple of Hira, known as a basilica, redated 560 BC. The temple has 9 columns on the short side and the double, 18 on the long side. The temple was dedicated to Hera, the wife sister of Zeus, and patron goddess of the Euboeans. As the temple facade has an uneven number of columns, and here we can see the plan on this picture, the internal plan of the cella is divided in 2 naves by a range of columns. So from the portico, which is this one here, people could enjoy the internal view with the statue of the deity. Here below, the graphic reconstruction of how it was. 560 BC. we have the Severe Temple, Severe Doric, dedicated to Athena, but is known as the Temple of Ceres. The temple was redated 510 BC and located on the Acropolis, the upper part of the city, to remind people of her protection. Athena embodies the sense and reason, active intelligence, the value of victory and daring in war. The temple has 6 columns on the short side and 13, the double plus 1 on the long side. And this is the classic canon of the Greek temples architecture. In Paestum, there are exceptions, as we saw on the first temple, 918, the double. And as we will see in the next temple, 614, the double plus 2. Probably being far away from the motherland, they felt free to experiment other solutions. Here we have the plan of the cella inside. This time is one single nave. Very simple. This is the entrance. Few steps to go into the cella, where there was the statue of the deity. And here below, a graphic reconstruction of the temple. Very elegant. The classic Doric temple, the temple of Poseidon, known as the temple of Neptune, the mythological god of the ocean. This temple was dated 460 BC. This means 23 years before the Parthenon. The Parthenon was built between 447 to 438. That means that the Parthenon was built in 9 years of time. As Paestum is on the sea and the inhabitants were living with the sea activities, it is obvious to have the Temple of Poseidon for protection. An inland city, they don't know what to do with Poseidon. On the right here, we have a plan of the cella. I'd like to remind you that this is a 614 temple. Which is divided inside here in 3 naves, just like many Christian churches. The picture below is showing the temple as it was, plastered in white with red and blue decoration of the metopes and triglyphs. Greek temples are looking east, they are facing east. They are looking at the rising of the sun, the beginning of life, the source of energy, the power that marks time for nature and living beings. The Romans who adopted the Greek Olympus, they accepted this philosophy, but their temple are looking south, where the sun shows its maximum power. Greek architects worked extensively on the architecture, often adopting the formula of the golden ratio. They noticed that where there was more light, the space expanded, falsifying the verticality and the horizontality of the lines. The observer, from a certain distance, perceived these disharmonies due to optical illusion. Based on this observation, they have adapted optical correction. On this slide, we can see the optical correction. The corner of the columns are closer, slightly larger in diameter, and leaning inward. Furthermore, the floor is curving upward to prevent the floor appearing deflated. These are called optical correction of the diver, which is a tomb that has a special room in the Museum of Paestum. Well, in order to better focus the scenes painted in the internal surface of the tomb, it is important to talk about the symposium. The symposium is a drink-together party organized by the Athenian elite. It started with a sort of wine tasting to ensure the quality. Once all guests were reclining on the clinae, which are the beds, they could elect a symposiarch, who was the leader for that specific banquet. The symposiarch was making the decision on how many parts of water had to be mixed with wine, usually 6, and how many cups the single guest were allowed to drink. The positive side of drinking wine in the right measure was that it led to straight talk. Beside the elder guest, considered the life teacher, there were young men by law of minimum 14 years of age, called Paedescaloi. The only ladies allowed were the heteres, refined women of upper class and culture, able to face a proper conversation and entertain guests. The symposium was, that we know, was by Plato, and it is the only written report we have of the ancient Greece. This tomb was found in 1968, not long ago. It was found isolated, 1 mile outside Paestum city walls. It is a simple underground tomb in the shape of a rectangular case. The 5 stone slabs inside are carefully grouped in the interconnections to prevent water infiltration, so it was found in perfect condition. The finding was so essential and so sensational that the entire archaeological world came to Paestum to see. Why? Well, just because of the Greek ancient world, ladies and gentlemen, there is a lot in architecture, there is a lot in sculpture, but almost nothing in painting. The expression, the anatomy, the colors, the fashion, the action is like a film shot 2,500 years ago. Let's see the ceremonial slab. The ceremonial slab is depicted with 3 people over here, positioned one behind another, to give the feeling of a ceremonial opening, the triumphal entry of the host. Naked, as you can see. He only wears an elegant blue shawl. on his shoulder. The symposium is in his honor. It will take place next to the single Erastes, who's offering him a cup of wine as a welcome. The first figure leading the procession is over here, is the only female here represented. The young girl dressed in a simple white peplo. She plays a double flute. Ending the row, a solemn-looking man dressed in a white imitation with a brown polka dots. He holds the teacher's stick in his left hand. On each long side, we can see 3 beds, clini, with 2 couples and a single male. These figures are leaning on mats made of a thick blue blanket and their left elbow on the cushion. All convivial are semi-naked. They are covered with a blanket of different design and colors from the waist down. Each of the 4 couples are elder and young. The elder one is called Erastes, and young men are called Eromenes. The scenes are painted in 2 different dimensions. As you can see, this is farther down and this is closer. It is a friendly convivial, a symposium with music, entertainment, parlor games, and erotic flirtation. Plato in the symposium also adds the cultural aspect of it. On the ceiling of the tomb, a beige line frames the scene, having in the 4 corners a stylized palm with 9 leaves. On the right, at half height, the scene starts with the trunk with the 7 branches and the yellow leaves. Then 3 columns, each one made of 8 drums. Finally, we have the diver, flat-shaped shadow of a man with genitals in evidence, an elegant dive into the water painted in blue-gray with small waves. The naked diver in midair is an instant between the 3 elements, the earth and air and water. The symbolic transmigration of the soul. The diver jumps from the known world, symbolized by the pillars of Hercules, which was the end of the world known of those days, according to classic literature, into the water. It is a river, it is a sea. If a river, it should be Styx, the river Styx, which leads in the afterlife. But in this case, the tree with 7 branches symbolizing perfection does not make sense on one side and on the other side, if it's a river Styx. If it is the sea, could be the Okeanos, the ocean, where everything converges. an unknown world. This makes more sense, since the dive takes place from the Pillars of Hercules, the border of the known world. The painting ends with another tree, as you can see here, with 7 branches and yellow leaves. From perfection to perfection. Number 7. Same beginning, same end. From the splendor of life and vitality to the inevitable conclusion of it, and then to shine again. Briefing, who was the diver? Important actually is to understand who was this elegant person that had this elegant tomb, and how he died. The answer is made of questions, actually. Had he deceased, agreed with the painter the scenes to paint before his death? Or it was the painter himself who had already prepared his tomb? No doubt he was a man who did not want to be involved in mass burial. Let's reflect. 26 miles south of Paestum, there is the Greek city of Elea that you can see here. Still there with its interesting monuments, partially preserved. Here we can see the Rosa Gate. It's a rare sample of arch of the 5th century, rebuilt a century later. Still a magnificent monument built in a narrow natural gorge. The town of Elea was known for the Academy of Philosophy. The founder of the school was the pre-Socratic philosopher Parmenides, who died during the 450 BC at 65 years of age. And this scholar Zeno, that we can see over here, who died during the year 430 at the age of 59. Clearly Stoic. The tomb of the diver is dated 470. So Stoics supported the virtue of self-control and to be detached from material things, following reason and not passion. The diver was a wealthy and cultural man, or he could not be the member of a symposium. His target was to be buried among his friends in an eternal symposium. Here we have the Lucanian tombs that are now in the Museum of Paestum. I'd just like to remind you that the Lucanians were those local people that they have conquered Paestum during the 5th, 4th century BC. And they tried to imitate the Greek art, but really without a great success. The Lucanian tombs are mainly decorated with chariot races, athletes boxing or wrestling, fighting warriors, and knights on horseback. And even though they were painted a century after the Greek tomb of the diver, there is no comparison with the beauty and the perfection of Greek art. Here, an incredible representation, as you can see, of a winged personage of the Greek mythology, Charon, the famous ferryman of Hades, the patron of the underworld. The deceased is paying toll on the gangway ready to board the Charon boat. She will be ferried along the river Styx that separates the earth to the hereafter. In the lower panel, this one, an attendant here, and the priestess, they carry offering proceeding by an ox, a sacrificial victim, and the executioner here with an axe, an extraordinary document of a funeral ceremony. Just like to mention that the animals that were sacrificed to the deities of the underworld were always of black skin. This showcases a fine amphora painted with an unusual representation of Aphrodite, goddess of beauty, pleasure, passion, and procreation. She is represented in an eternal dance, a sort of an ethereal dance, suspended in all her beauty over the nature, spiral vine tendrils and large pointed leaves. On both sides, there are winged heroes, deities, deity of love, lust, and sex. Here we have a nuptial vase. These vases are called lebes. It's a form of ancient Greek pottery used in marriage ceremonies. Actually, there are three vases, one on the top of another, glued on the top of each other. It was used in the marriage ritual to sprinkle the bride with water before the wedding. Then there is a ring bottle here below for dressing, olive oil, vinegar, herbs. Then here on the right, we have a dish for fresh fish, one of the favorite dishes of the Greeks. These are just a few samples of the rich collection in the Museum of Paestum. Outstanding. Well, ladies and gentlemen, it was really a pleasure to talk to you about Paestum. And let's hope to learn more about it in your next visit in Italy. Ciao.